And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live, where we will be having some discussion about what is going on in the world today. We'll take a look at some clips from the news, share a little bit of dialogue with those of you who are able to join us in the live portion in the comments section. And if you are listening anywhere else and you'd like to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk. And I will remind you again, and I'll put the moniker up on there. If you're watching on Prepper University, remember that first week of June coming up here real fast. Okay. I'm going to stop dual podcasting. So it will not be on Prepper University anymore. It will only be on Coffee Talk Live. So please do remember to subscribe to Coffee Talk Live. That's at Coffee Talk Live. It's on the screen now. So that if you like the podcast, you can continue to find it. And then Prepper University will become fully Prepper University again. And you can also, of course, find me on at Coffee Talk Chat on X. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. And I'll take a minute to say hello to everyone who's able to join us here today. I see Tuck is here, as well as Jeff, Jimmy, Dragon, John, Helter, Legends, Sven, Caps, and Nature Nerd. He says, no tax on tips and overtime, no tax on senior citizens collecting Social Security. Interesting note, a couple of things I want to bring up first. I don't know if you can hear it. It's pouring out here. It's been raining off and on almost nonstop for a week and a half where I am. And it's been intense sometimes. And right now it's pouring really hard. You can't see 20 feet outside. But so if you hear that, anything in the background, that's what it is. I wanted to show this. This is on my phone because I am subscribed to myself just to see if I get notifications. And I got one this morning, sometime after 11 o'clock, for the podcast from 3 days ago. I guess I should be happy that I got a notification at all. I should be happy I got a notification at all, I guess, right? Is that how that works? I see Fluke Man has joined us, as well as D-Lo. Glad you could join us today. I wanted to touch on something that came up yesterday. Now, many of you are aware. Some of you were here. I see Puck is here as well, saying cats, indeed. Yeah, which the rain has hindered me searching for them. And I can't even put posters up. I've tried, but you know, with as much rain as we've had, they just fall apart. But some of you were here yesterday when we got trolled, and I wanted to make a point about that. Because I thought this was there's an aspect of it that was rather interesting to me, anyways. And for one thing, the person was in a position to try to make a viable argument. Okay. They were in a position to try and make a viable argument. I'm gonna explain what I mean here in a second. JJ says notification worked for me today for both channels. Wow, I'm shocked. I'm shocked. Cyberjack Senior has joined us. And Tuck says, I get more notifications for your channel since I started just setting an alarm on my phone for 1:45. Yeah, do it yourself, I guess. But the person who was trolling, they said something that was true, okay? When they were talking about California's economy, they suggested that California, as a state, earns more revenue than any other state, which is actually true because of all the import and export that goes through California, all the shipping, for one thing. They do earn more than any other state in the union. That's the truth. My counter argument on that, however, was that's not an excuse for them to misuse and mishandle tax money, because they're in the hole. They're in a deficit. They owe money. and they're in the red everything they do. Okay. And I made a couple of points for which I was accused of lying about it, spreading misinformation. Her misinformation. I was insulted personally. People in the comments section were insulted, picked on, made fun of, and then I was threatened. At which point, when you start messing with people in the comment section and making it uncomfortable for everybody, it's time for you to go. I don't mind people having an opposing opinion. That's fine, because everybody, they don't have the same thought process. But I just wanted to point out that, first of all, what I was talking about, and I'll pull up a couple of the old news stories real quick. Most of you have seen these because we've read them before. The things that I mentioned were things from stories that I've read as examples of gross misuse of tax funds and wasteful spending to the point where they don't even know what's going on. Here's the old article about the audit from California that they had spent $24 billion on homelessness, but didn't consistently track the outcome. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically, bottom line, and I thought it was closer to 30, but this article says 24 billion, 24 billion, 28 billion, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. But maybe 24 billion is correct. In 5 years, they spent 24 billion and they didn't track it. So they don't know who got the money, what it was spent on. They don't know what happened to it. There's no accountability. That's the kind of thing that I was talking about. And I brought it up, and I was told basically that I was lying. You can find these articles. You don't have to take my word for a damn thing. I don't tell anybody to do anything or believe anything. You don't have to take my word for it. You're on the internet. You can look these articles up. You can look this stuff up. Here's another one, also from California, state of California, talking about the unemployment, which I also brought up yesterday, and I was told that I was lying. Just to show real quick, this is an old ABC News article. California admits paying as much as $31 billion in unemployment funds to criminals. They were fraudulent payments. They lost $31 billion in fraudulent payments. And of course, we also remember that we've read the article about, I don't think I have it pulled up, but we read the article about the 30 or so billion that was allegedly hacked by, who was it, Typhoon, the hacking operation from California. Here it is. It popped up late. Not from California, from China, excuse me. 30-something billion, some 20 to 30 billion missing from their COVID relief funds. No accountability. They don't know what happened to it. That sort of thing goes on all the time. Just because they have a huge income, just because they make so much money from their tax revenue, is no excuse to just squander those resources. That's my point. And this person could have made some interesting arguments, but they chose to get nasty instead. And I find that very often, that's the way that most people respond. Instead of saying, if you can't rebuttal, just get to the point where you're like, you know what, I just don't agree with that, or I don't believe that. Okay, fine. But to sit there and insult the person and insult other people and argue and make threats, it's really ridiculous. But that's what most people do nowadays, and you see that a lot from the younger generation. Fluke Man, no, I have not tried Facebook. Keep in mind, I have gone around and talked to the neighbors, but where I am now, I mean, we're talking about neighbors that have 20, 30 acre plots. If I don't know if anybody around here, it's not like I'm in a denser populated area where Facebook would help much. John says, if I'm being trolled, I'm doing the right thing. Okay. And Monkey has joined us, as well as Big Red. And Puck says another point. Let me close that. It's interfering with StreamYard. Another point, what's the cost of living in California? Anything like New York? It's worse. Cost of living in California is really, really bad, actually, right now. And it's because of the excessive taxes. Instead of letting people enjoy that additional so-called income that the state makes that puts them as the number one earner state-wise, okay, they milk people for every penny they can get and then squander the money. Misused, misappropriated, mishandled funds. And it's obvious. It's obvious. JJ says they missed the fun yesterday. Kind of. And Raccoon has joined us. And John reminds us taxation is extortion. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Anyway, as we get ready to jump off here into actual news, I just wanted to cover that because I thought that was very interesting in hindsight, just looking at how people react nowadays. And I don't think they teach debate in high school anymore. And unfortunately, most people think or believe that whoever's the loudest or the most obnoxious or the most vulgar wins the argument. But you don't. You just look foolish or annoying. Incredible. Nature Nerd says California has a $30 fee for using your own kayak. That's incredible. And I'll just run over a couple of these really quick. Tuck says part of their tax revenue is due to California being lucky enough to have seaports, correct? My county is rife with problems despite having the income from a major seaport, which is Port Everglades. And Monkey says the fact that a person followed up with an insult at the end of a statement, likely they are room temperature IQ. But like I said, they were right about the California's overall income, and they could have worked with that and made a viable argument, and I would have talked to them. But, you know, when they get to the point where they're just deliberately being obnoxious, it's time to go. And normally I don't bother with the comments section. If somebody's being annoying or counter, I'll ignore them, but I'll let them talk. But if when it gets as bad as that they're sitting there attacking people in the comment section, it's time to freaking go. It's time to freaking go. As we're going to get into the subject of the thumbnail here, because of course we read yesterday that Elon is walking away, which of course his tenure is up. He was a special employee, which only gives him 130 days in his position, for which he was not paid, but he doesn't need the money, so whatever. He doesn't need the money, so whatever. That's okay. That's okay. But this is a New York Post article, and it answers the questions because, and I was asked in the comment section after the fact. Again, I know more people watch this after the live than during the live. So there you go. So there you go. But people were curious. All right, well, who's going to run it? Who's going to run it now? New York Post. White House reveals new DOGE leaders now that Elon is gone. Yeah, Elon is done. He's got his own house to get in order. And so Musk officially wrapping up his time at the cost-cutting initiative he pioneered. President Trump and his cabinet officials will step in to fill the void in the Department of Government Efficiency, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt reveals. The DOGE leaders are each and every member of the president's cabinet, and the president himself, who is wholeheartedly committed to cutting waste, fraud, and abuse from our government. Musk, who's 53, has been winding down his DOGE responsibilities in recent weeks, as his time as a special government employee was set to conclude by the end of May. Again, a lot of people thought he was going to be there for 4 years. Now he returns to leading his business, including Tesla, which has been battered by brutal sales numbers out of Europe and uncertainty over how to navigate Trump's tariff policies, among other issues. I think the biggest problem with Tesla, honestly, was all the vandalism. because that just causes a lot of problems. It slows down the whole process. Where are we here? Musk's de facto number 2 at DOGE, Steve Davis, has also departed his role due to the limitations of special government employees being allowed to serve 130 days. On paper, neither was technically in charge of DOGE, though in practice, they were widely seen as the department's leaders. In February, the Trump administration announced Amy Gleason was the acting administrator for the U.S. DOGE services. Despite Musk's departure, Leavitt stressed that much of the talent he brought on is expected to stay, at least to the best of her knowledge. The entire cabinet is involved, she explained. I spoke to the president about it this morning, and the entire cabinet understands the need to cut government waste, fraud, and abuse, and each cabinet secretary at their respective agencies is committed to that. They'll continue to work with the respective DOGE employees who have on board as political appointees at all of these agencies. Surely the mission of DOGE will continue. DOGE has been met with much fanfare from conservatives, particularly among fiscal hawks in Congress. Over recent days, however, Musk and others have struck a gloomy tone about DOGE, suggesting that Republicans are undercutting its progress with the advancement of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And Musk says here, I was disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decreases it, and undermines the work that the DOGE team is doing. But Musk also bemoaned to the Washington Post that DOGE is just becoming the whipping boy for everything, and publicly buttressed criticisms of congressional Republicans for not codifying the DOGE cuts. So in case anybody was wondering who's in charge, now you've got a basic idea. I see Peter is here. There you go. Oh, and D'Lo just bought a home there in California. Oh, that couldn't have been cheap. I hope you got a good deal. JJ says, why am I seeing a crown and numbers after some viewers' names? I don't know. I have no idea. Why are we seeing a crown and numbers? Anybody know what that means? Is that some new goofy thing that ScrewTube is doing for like people who make a lot of comments or who have been here for a long time, perhaps? Incredible. Yeah, there you go. Tuck says he has a crown because he's the king of wishful thinking, giving us an 80s pop music reference there. Legends asked if I blocked him. Yeah, I eventually had to block that person because it was just too much. Yeah, like I said, you can sit there. I don't like it when people start getting into pissing matches with the other people in the comment section, because that's not what they're here for. They're just here for some conversation, basically, it seems like to me. Peter's waiting for that Tesla phone. Yeah, they're working on that. Cheap alternative. There are inexpensive alternatives to cell phone providers out there. Monkey says they hear that BYU, the Chinese electric vehicle company, outsold Tesla in Europe, and BYUs are built poorly. Expect suddenly exploding vehicles within a few years. Yeah, a lot of people are wondering about the crown and numbers. Yeah, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that actually means. It's got to be some new goofy thing that YouTube is doing to make everybody feel special. Isn't that special? Yeah. So that sounds like the kind of crap that Facebook does. I'm sure you've seen that sort of thing on Facebook. Oh, here's your report on how active you've been in such and such group. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about that. They really don't. But yeah, that must be something new. That must be, hey, maybe if everybody who has a crown, that means I'll get extra money. I make like almost nothing from AdSense, so it really doesn't even matter. Like I've said before, I do better with the occasional donation, and all of that goes to taking care of our shelter cats. So Yeah, I don't even care about that. It'd be nice if I got some actual AdSense money for real, for real. Yeah, everybody is seeing those little crowns. I'm not seeing them here. On my end, I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't know what that means, the numbers of the crowns or whatever, but I guess I would have to look at it on the outside to figure out what the hell that's all about. I'm assuming. I'm going to pull up a story here, okay? And this is a local story, okay? This is a local story from South Carolina. It is not in the mainstream media. It's not in the mainstream media. I have not found it anywhere except in bits and pieces. And it's actually kind of a significant story, I think, that I'm going to share with everybody. Okay. South Carolina news. This is a couple of days old. I think, what's the date on this? I think this happened May 13th. Excuse me. I think this happened May 13th. Okay. And this is a live on 5 WCSC local news from Charleston, South Carolina. All right. Sheriff says 6 are charged in a woman's death, including minors, and they could all be deported from the U.S. It was 6 illegal immigrants, most of which you see the 3 kids here in the orange prison garb. Those are young teenagers. Young teenagers murdered this woman. Okay. So Lancaster, South Carolina, 6 undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants, including 3 minors. I heard it was technically 5, but 2 of them are like 17 plus. I could be wrong about that, though. Were charged Monday in connection with a shooting that left a woman dead during an attempted robbery in South Carolina. The deadly shooting happened just before midnight, May 2nd, along Riverside Road in Lancaster. And remember, this story didn't come out till May 13th. Officers said they found 40-year-old Larisha Thompson behind the wheel of her Honda Accord, dead from gunshot wounds. Earlier in the evening, deputies said that Thompson left her home nearby and headed to Rock Hill alone. Family members lost contact with her and began searching and found her in the car. The shooting defies any sense of decency in a civilized society, according to Lancaster Sheriff Barry Fail. Ms. Thompson was going about her business Friday night, not bothering anyone. And they don't have pictures of the other 3, just these 3. I don't see pictures of the other one, of the other kids, okay, that were involved in this. The one on the far right looks like he's 12. This is pathetic. On Monday, the sheriff's office said they arrested 6 people in connection. 3 people are being charged as adults, including a 21-year-old Asael Torres Chirinos, 18-year-old Jarby Ramos Odari, 17-year-old Jason Pineda Salgado, each charged with murder, attempted armed robbery, and second-degree burglary, being held without bail. Additionally, there are 3 teenagers aged 15, 14, and 13 detained and charged as juveniles with murder, attempted armed robbery, and second-degree burglary. So they showed the picture of the 3 young kids, but they don't tell you their names because of their ages. So it's 4 of them are minors because one is 17-year-old, although I'm not sure what the age of consent laws are in South Carolina. But yeah, okay, so 2 technical adults and 4 technical teenagers. The one I thought was 12 is probably the 13-year-old. Their names will not be released since they are juveniles, and they'll be charged in family court. According to the sheriff, all 6 are in the U.S. illegally and may be facing deportation under federal immigration laws. You know where they'll be going then. You know where they'll be going if that's the case. Okay. But yeah, this is not, unfortunate. This one flew right under the radar because right now the mainstream media is trying to pretend like these people are all victims for being in here illegally and getting thrown out of the country. But this is why they're being thrown out of the country. Big Red says Californians are moving en masse to Tennessee, Texas, Nebraska, Arizona, Utah, and more. The problem with that, though, Big Red, is that they bring their bad habits with them. The things that they claim to be running from, they will bring some of that with them to wherever they move to and possibly contaminate it. They're not going to move to those places. Some of them, not all, but some of them will move to those places with the same ideals that got them into trouble in the first place. And D'Lo reminds everybody, thumbs up. Yeah, please do, everyone, if you do not mind. If you do not mind, I'll take all the thumbs up I can get. Yeah, Peter says adult crime, adult time. Most likely, though, they're going to be sent to El Salvador. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And Bond is here. JJ says ranking based on participation. Oh, it's still talking about the Little Crown and the numbers. Yeah, I have no idea what the hell that all means. Some kind of weird ranking system that ScrewTube came up with to copy Facebook, I guess. I'm sure we'll figure it out eventually. I'm sure we'll figure it out eventually. But yeah, I was not seeing this story anywhere. And I think that's rather significant. I mean, these are kids. Even the 18-year-old, to me, it's a kid. You know? And then you got the one guy who's 21. You got the one guy who's 21 that was involved in this. But for the most part, they're all minors. They're all from South America, it looks like, especially with the names. Torres, Chirinos, Ramos Oldari, Pineda Salgado. Yeah, they're from South America. In the country illegally, committing crimes. And this is why people want them put out. This is why people want them put out. This is why, I mean, we get enough of that with our own citizens without importing them to do the same garbage in our country. Seriously. We got enough of that already from our own legitimate, born in the country citizen because of years of neglect in the nuclear family, and amongst other things, without importing people to be even worse and cause more problems. But I don't know if anyone had seen this story. I think it's rather significant. And of course, the person who was killed was a black woman. Larisha, it doesn't say it here at all, but it's not in this article, but I've seen the picture. 40-year-old Larisha Thompson was black. Killed by basically 6 South American kids. Again, as old as I am, even a 21-year-old is a kid. You know what I mean? And that story went right under the radar. That's what Puck says, due process. Indeed, due process. That's the problem. That's the problem. Due process. Big Red says they still vote Democrat, talking about what he brought up earlier with people leaving California in droves. I see people commenting every day, I'm moving from Portland or San Francisco because there's too much crime, even though they voted for it. And Puck gave me a thumbs up. Thank you. Says he only sees 4 where he is. Come on, guys. No, it's all right. I appreciate it, though. I mean, it's if you give a thumbs up to either channel. As I've stated before, rumor has it, it helps with the algorithm. I don't believe that. I think it's a lie. But I don't think that they do. I don't think it helps. But I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So there's that. Anyways, Nature Nerd says not worth having these vandals in our school influencing our students. Public school is a bad influence, period. It's a bad influence, period. That's the number one argument. When I homeschooled my kids, okay, the biggest argument that I got from the public school system's end was, well, how are your kids going to socialize? I don't want my kids socializing with riffraff from all over the place that I don't know what kind of home training they've had. They're going to come to school and be evil. You know who Edward James Olmos is? Is it Olmos? Edward James Olmos, is that the guy's name? He used to be on Miami Vice, and then he was on the second incarnation of Battlestar Galactica. You know who I'm talking about? He had a PSA in the 80s. Okay, here I'm working the wheels back. He had a PSA in the 80s that he did in English and in Spanish. And it's the most honest PSA I've ever heard of. It's the most honest PSA I've ever heard of. Because he said, when your kids come home from school, if your kids go to public school, when they come home, talk to them and find out what went on that day. Because every day in America, 16,000 crimes are committed in public schools. Remember, this is the 80s. Edward James Olmos, right? Every day, 16,000 crimes are committed in America, and they go unnoticed in the public school system. He's talking about in the school. Go unnoticed by officials. Talk to your kids and find out what they're exposed to. And I'm like, that is incredible. It's about the only public school PSA I've ever seen that made any sense. And it's true, because your kids should be debriefed every day if they're going to public school. The biggest argument I always got from the public school system, how are your kids going to socialize? I don't want them socializing with a random God knows who at public schools. They're going to teach them all kinds of evil things and teach them to be disrespectful and teach them to be hypersexualized. I don't want that. I want to raise a wholesome, honest person if possible. Okay? That's what I want. Excuse me. And the way around that, of course, is you expose them to kids, and then the public school system doesn't have a leg to stand on. So I have my kids in like karate class, swim class. They were in swim team at the Y, things like that. As long as they're around other children, then the state has nothing to say. Nothing to say. I got to look for that PSA. I'm going to look for that PSA. If I can find it, I want to put it up on my channel, because I'll put it on Coffee Talk Live. It's the most honest PSA I've ever seen. Big Red says a lot of Mexicans think America is rightfully theirs and it's their right to illegally live in America, taking advantage of our system. You know what the thing is with that? And here's the big challenge, okay? This is the challenge. And I've had this argument, okay? And it doesn't go over well because people will get mad at you for saying it. They will complain about their heritage, and then they'll try to claim Texas and California. Okay, this is Mexicans, and I'll ask them what language they speak. Do you speak Spanish? Oh, of course I speak Spanish. I speak the language of my people. No, you don't. You speak the language of your conquerors. Spanish comes from Spain. Do you speak Aztec? I don't think so. You speak Spanish. You speak the language of your conquerors, who also conquered Texas and California. And it was the Spanish who were driven out, not the Mexicans. But they don't know their own history any more than Americans know ours. They just don't. They just don't. As we get ready to jump into the next article here. And Paul is here. He says, saying hello from New Jersey. Love the channel. Keep up the good work. I'm trying, and thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Oh God, yeah, here we go. We're still going down this. Big Red says, yesterday I saw a child wearing a furry tail while wearing LGBT socks. It solidified my decision to homeschool if I have children. Yeah, please do. If you can, that's the first choice. Private would be the second choice because you have more control over what they're exposed to. Public school, you have no rights. Believe me, I've worked in that system. You have no rights. No rights. Peter says unnoticed or ignored, talking about public school. There's a big argument for for ignored. They let a lot of stuff slip, I'm sure. But again, I just saw a flash. It is raining pretty hard out here, and I just saw a flicker in the power. So hopefully I don't get interfered with on the podcast here. Because remember the other day I was cut off after half an hour because the cable went out. The cable had gone out temporarily. But yeah, I think I'm going to look for that. I'm going to look for that PSA. And I remember he did it in English and in Spanish because he spoke fluent Spanish and said the exact same thing in both languages in two different commercials. But I want to find that and put it up because it's the truth. And I've said that for years, doing the podcasts and other things. Your children, if you have no alternative, which you do, but if you have no alternative or feel like you have no other choice but to have your kids in public school, they must be debriefed every day. They must be debriefed every freaking day. Because, and I don't mean how was your day? Don't ask them because they're just going, oh, fine. And they won't tell you nothing. Details. Talk to these children. Most parents don't even know their kids. It's sad. I've been exposed to way too much of it in my professional experience. They don't know their kids at all. They don't know. They're roommates. You shoo them out the door early in the morning unless they just leave on their own and they get on some bus somewhere in the dark and go to public school, learn basically nothing. We talked about that yesterday. Again, my wife in her training class yesterday had two people, one age 20, one age 23, couldn't fill out an envelope. They didn't know how to address an envelope. She had to explain it to them and show them. And one of them still wasn't getting it, and she had to do the envelope for her. It was an OSHA compliance class, by the way. That I did not know yesterday. She talked to me about it more when she got home. But this is where we're at. You've got to find out what happens with these kids every day. You can't have the kid just go and living their own life separate from you completely. Talk to them. God help us. Talk to them. And I see Happy has joined us, says they're new to the channel. Are you on Prepper University or Coffee Talk? Because I'll just another casual reminder, as of the first week of June, the podcast will only be on Coffee Talk Live and will not be on Prepper University anymore. So again, if you enjoy the podcast, you've got to be subscribed to Coffee Talk. There it is on the screen again, in order to see it. And yeah, I don't know if you can hear that. Man, it's pouring hard outside. It'll fill up the rain barrels. Anyways, this is actually from the Department of Justice. This is the Department of Justice's own website that I'm pulling up here. Okay. United States Attorney's Office, District of Columbia. You see there on the screen. Former defense contractor pleads guilty to tax crimes. Why is this not in the news? Why is this not in the news? Okay, I haven't seen any news stories on this. Defendant admits to concealing 50% ownership of a $7 billion defense contract business in order to evade taxes. Douglas Eidelman, 73 years old, former defense contractor, pleaded guilty today to tax crimes related to a scheme to defraud the United States and evade taxes or income he had earned from his contracts with the U.S. Department of Defense. The sentence announced by U.S. Attorney Jean Ferris-Pirro, Acting Deputy Assistant Attorney General Karen E. Kelly from the Justice Department Tax Division, Special Agent in Charge Kareem A. Carter, blah, blah, blah. Eidelman pleaded guilty to 10 felony counts, conspiracy to defraud the United States, 7 counts of tax evasion, and 2 counts of making false statements. U.S. District Court Judge Colleen Cotter-Cotley scheduled a hearing on issues related to sentencing, which will be on November 17th, 2026. Trial on the remaining counts of the indictment will be 2026. Why are they holding it off for a year? Get it over with. He already pled guilty. According to court documents and statements made in court, Eidelman founded and owned 50% of MENA Corporation and Red Star Enterprises, a defense contracting business that received more than $7 billion worth of contracts from the United States Department of Defense, providing jet fuel in the United States post 9/11 military efforts in Afghanistan and the Middle East. Working with others, Eidelman engaged in a lengthy scheme to hide his MENA Red Star profits, evading U.S. taxes, including concealing his income in undisclosed foreign bank accounts, creating false documents, making false statements about co-conspirators as a French and also acting as a French citizen residing abroad and without U.S. tax obligations. And I believe this guy, I'm looking for it. I'm reading ahead and looking for it. I believe he was doing it out of an office in like Turkey. Like here it says he had a Swiss bank account. He had an account in Singapore under a false name. Trying to read ahead here. But we're talking about 50% of $7 billion. He's got property in Europe, in Spain, and in London, Mexico, Eastern Europe, a farm in Kenya. That's incredible. I mean, we're half of $7 billion. So $3.5 billion in fraud right under the Pentagon's nose. And this isn't in the news. Has anyone seen this story? Has anyone seen this story? That's pretty significant. How many other defense contractors have been ripping off tax money? How many other defense contractors were ripping us off while they were making money hand over fist in Afghanistan? That doesn't make any sense. But it happens. And I've got to go to the Department of Justice's menu page. This is dated Wednesday, May 21st. This article. I wonder if anyone saw this. Wonder if anyone saw this article anywhere. More than $7 billion in contracts from the U.S., while he hid somehow 50% of his interest. I don't know how much he actually got away with. I'm just speculating. It doesn't tell you exactly. And he's from overseas. Thought he was going to get away with it. Thought he was going to go away with it. Or get away with it. Speaking of getting away with things. Once again, I will give you Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders with more speculation. Peter wants to know, is he American? How did he get a Swiss account with all the required reporting? When we lived in Switzerland, it was a nightmare for my wife. I don't think he is. I don't think he's American. But he also had a false identity that was French, if I read that correctly. And so he had accounts in different countries, including, so it's not like on TV where they're like, oh, yes, we'll just put the money in a Swiss bank account. It doesn't work like that. We'll put our money in the Cayman Islands. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yeah, Puck says, I can't wait to see what fraud stories coming from Ukraine produces in the near future. I can imagine. But I want to jump to this Bernie Sanders story because I like picking on him. It's the truth. I like picking on him because he's ridiculous. He's absolutely ridiculous. Caps says, I don't want my kids to go to school because they'll be exposed to violence and sexual content and body shaming and other things and be made to feel insecure about themselves. Yeah, and then they'll come home with feathers in their hair and tell you that they identify as a chicken. You don't know what the hell goes on in there. You don't know what the hell goes on. It doesn't make any. It's scary. Public school has gotten. It was bad when I was a kid. I can just imagine. But here we go. More speculation from Bernie Sanders because he just can't shut his big pie hole. Bernie Sanders blames. I'm sorry. This is an independent article. Bernie Sanders blames the election loss on Kamala Harris listening to billionaires over the working class. Is that what she did wrong? She listened to billionaires instead of the working class. Seriously. Well, I'm glad we have Bernie to explain these things to us. Bernie Sanders has blamed Kamala Harris for her election loss to Trump, saying she chose to cozy up to billionaires instead of addressing the issues faced by working class Americans. The 83-year-old independent senator and former Democratic presidential candidate said that while Joe Biden has faced plenty of criticism for election loss, it was ultimately Harris's fault. Let's throw Harris under the bus. A lot of people are saying it was Joe Biden's fault that Kamala Harris lost the election. Not true. It was the fault of Kamala Harris and her constituents. They did not run a campaign designed to speak to the American working class. Sanders said he absolutely believed Harris could have won, but she did not talk about the needs of the working class Americans. I ran all over the country trying to elect Kamala Harris and begged them to talk to the needs of the working class. Talk about raising minimum wage. Talk about real health care reform. Talk about building the kind of massive amounts of housing that we need. Putting checks on landlords. But they use their billionaire friends. So basically the problem is that Kamala listened to the people who made donations to her. Is that the idea? Because it's the real big, you can talk about Trump all you want, but good Lord, the Billionaires Club with the $1.2 billion worth of campaign funding that was dumped into the Democratic Party for the presidential election and wasted and overspent. He's got some nerve, Mr. Fight the Oligarchy, while he's on tour, living the life of luxury, $15,000 an hour for private jets, running around the country with AOC. And I ask again, when the hell are you in your own state, in your own district, representing your own constituents, while you run around all over the country doing anything but? When do you do your job? Peter says Bernie used to talk about millionaires until he was exposed as being a millionaire. True. And JJ calls into question Bernie's work ethic, says it's laughable he speaks for the working class. And I think most of us are aware. I think he was, 40 years old when he got his first actual job, which was the mayor of a sleepy town in Vermont. He's never worked. He's never worked. That man has never gotten his hands dirty unless he screwed up when he was in the bathroom. Bernie continues. The bottom line here is Democrats have to answer a very simple question. Which side are you on? And that answer has not yet been made. Sanders, who has been running his Fight the Oligarchy tour with popular Democrat AOC that has drawn huge crowds across the United States, said that the core issue in America today is that there is more income and wealth inequality in the country than ever before. Listen, there's always been wealth inequality. Okay? There's always been wealth inequality. Even Yeshua, even Jesus said the poor will be with you always. Okay? Oh, no. Incredible. Incredible. Fight the oligarchy. Fight the oligarchy. What is the oligarchy, Bernie Sanders? You might remember that we've talked about this before because I actually caught it and I did a video on it at the time when they altered the definition of oligarchy in the online searches. Do you remember that? Nature Nerd said, shouldn't Bernie and AOC travel in electric buses to set an example? They won't get far in them. They will not get far in those buses. But Bernie Sanders goes on and on about the working class and has never worked or had a job outside of being a lawmaker or an activist. He seems to be independent, but ran on the Democrat ticket. He is a millionaire. Multi-millionaire. He's again by March, I think it was, right? The end of March had spent $250,000 almost on private jets alone, never mind his other expenditures. He lives a very luxurious lifestyle for somebody who goes on and on about that. And his Fight the Oligarchy tour, and they altered the definition of oligarchy during the start of the conflict with Ukraine to tie it into Russia. Okay, now here's the trick. Always keep an old dictionary. What does oligarchy mean? Let's see. Let me, I actually know how a dictionary works because I'm that old, and I'll look for oligarchy here, and I'll read the 1997 Merriam-Webster Dictionary definition of oligarchy, and we'll see if it has anything to do with Russians or wealth. All right? Let's do that. Oligarchy, a government in which power is in the hands of a few, the group holding power in such a state. Okay, is that it? I don't know if it's in focus. It might not be able to get in focus because it's the writing is very small. So an oligarchy in 1997 was when only a handful of people in government make all the decisions. Kind of sounds like most governments, doesn't it? Shit, it sounds like ours right now. It sounds like ours for the last few years. Puck says it wasn't because Harris was a terrible candidate. It was because they failed to execute the election fraud effectively. Yeah, that must be it. Cap says the man doesn't know what work is. Probably not. Work is something that someone else has to do so that he can live that luxurious lifestyle. And I bet he's an ass to people. You know, I see if you hear about that sort of thing, I want to hear somebody from behind the scenes that has to work with Bernie to see if he's a nice guy or if he treats people like shit. That's what I want to see. Kind of like Ellen DeGeneres, and she acts like such a sweetheart, apple pie on screen. But you talk to anyone who works with her and they'll tell you she's a beast. She treats people like garbage. Hillary Clinton, too. I've heard the same thing about Hillary. I've heard the same thing about Obama, that dealing with them personally, they treat people like shit. And I bet you Bernie is one of those guys. Fluke Man says you could go further on a bicycle than an electric bus. I don't think that Bernie can handle a bicycle. You know what? AOC and Bernie, they can get on a bicycle built for two. and they could ride across the country together with a little picnic basket on the front. That'd be cute. JJ says now if Bernie and AOC could travel in buses fueled by hot air or hubris, they'd get some serious mileage. Yeah, put them in a Zeppelin. That'd be a great idea. Nature Nerd says Trump treats people well behind the scenes. I've heard that. I've heard that. Puck says they got hit by another ad. Which channel are you watching on, Puck? And is anyone else experiencing that? I know that ScrewTube increased the ads again. Hey, maybe I'll actually get paid. I don't know. That'd be nice. It'd be nice. Peter says Webster still does not mention Russia still using the same definition, but it had changed online, and I did a video on it and I showed it. That they had. Raccoon says they're not even getting ads. Interesting. That is interesting. But the definition had changed, and I did a video at like 2 years ago at the beginning. Was it 2 years ago? That I did a video at that time. JJ says he's not seeing ads on Coffee Talk, and Puck says he is on Coffee Talk. Maybe YouTube is just picking on you, Puck. I don't know how any of that works. But they had tried to alter the definition. They had tried to alter the definition. But I wonder if even Bernie knows the definition. Odds are he does. I think, again, these politicians aren't half as stupid as they make themselves out to be. I think they know exactly what they're saying. I think they know exactly what they're talking about. And that they're counting on, maybe they're counting on people who are watching either A, not being very smart, which unfortunately most people are not that bright, if I'm being honest. I won't take that back. I know I'll offend somebody, but most people are not that smart. Okay? Not half as smart as they think they are. And two, counting on the fact that most people are so lazy that they're not going to bother to double check. They're not going to look it up, or they don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe an alternative viewpoint. They hear something they like and just latch onto it. That's the problem. Peter says on the online dictionary, maybe changed back because of Trump. Need to include him now. They might have changed it again. I haven't looked recently. Because last time it said something about wealth and oligarchy. Let me look up the definition real quick online. A small group of people having control of a country, organization, or institution. Oh, yeah, they took Russian out of it. They took Russia and wealth out of it, but it was put in during the beginning of the war, and that's why I did the video at the time, and I showed I demonstrated it. I showed the actual clips. They changed it back. Son of a bitch. They changed it back. Oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. It wouldn't have been changed back if Biden won. I don't think so. Puck thinks I'm going to get a check from Pfizer thanks to the ads. Oh, I wish I could. That's where the real money is, pharmaceuticals. Anyway, we'll take a look at the debt clock, usdebtclock.org. Very useful tool. With DOGE projections currently at $490 billion in savings. It looks like it'll hit 491 in the next few hours, which equates to a projected savings per taxpayer of $4,370 over time. Excellent. Raccoon says this is why we need books in physical, physical media. Otherwise, they can change it at any time. Yes. And I'm sure some of you might remember when Amazon tried to delete 1984 and Animal Farm and Brave New World from people's Kindles. Remember that? 180,000 plus people had the books disappear from their Kindles, and they complained, and Amazon put it back. Who remembers that? That was quite a while ago now, back when Kindle was in black and white. But then we are at the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and start signing off. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you can find the live portion Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube. And I'll put the moniker on there again, because remember, first week of June, I'm going to start walking it back from Prepper University. If you are watching on Prepper University, please join us on Coffee Talk Live so that you will not miss out if you like the podcast. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. So thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. As always, hope you got something out of the conversation. And we will catch you again on Monday.